Welcome to the Natural Health Matters podcast, where it's all about maximizing your health potential so that you can look and feel your best at any age. I'm your host, David Sandstrom, naturopathic doctor and biblical health coach, and this is episode number 77. Hi, Natural Nation. Today I have in the show with me two guests, Judd Johns and Dr. John Warford. Dr. John Warford is an ODO, or on-demand orthodontist. Now, in the published medical literature, there's a strong connection between oral health and our physical vitality in general, as if our oral health suffers, then our health and wellness will suffer as well. We talk about some of those connections in the published literature in this episode. Now, if you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you know that I believe we maximize our health potential by aligning our lives more fully with God's natural design for spirit, mind, and body. And in this episode, we're talking about literally aligning our teeth and our jaw bones to work the way God designed. Our teeth are supposed to mesh together like a gear and a cog, or a hand in a glove. And if our teeth and jawbone are out of alignment, that can pose problems for us down the road. So some people can benefit a great deal from orthodontic treatment. Now, Dr. John uses 21st century technology, and he can treat you. He can be your orthodontist no matter where you are in the world. He uses online technology with aligners, and there'll be a local dentist to do the physical stuff, but John is your orthodontist, and he does all the orthodontic work that needs to be done, and you use the aligners, you change them out once a week, and the technology is just fascinating, and I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. And we also talk about, towards the end, mercury amalgam fillings and the use of fluoride. So this is an information-packed episode. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think you're going to find this technology and this conversation fascinating. So let's jump right into my conversation with Judd Johns and Dr. John Warford. Today we have on the show two guests. One is Judd Johns, and Judd is an expert in on-demand orthodontist. And we have another expert. His name is John Warford, who is also very much an expert. So Judd, I'd like you to please introduce John.
You got it. So, my name is Judd Johns. We know each other very well, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm the president of a company called On Demand Orthodontist. That On Demand Orthodontist is Dr. John Warford, who's on the other line here with us today. Dr. John has been a practicing orthodontist for 18 years, based out of Bismarck, North Dakota. He can give you details on his practice, but he's got a very special practice. It's 92% aligner practice, over 500 cases a year. And what makes Dr. John so unique is he's found a path to treat patients virtually with far fewer appointments, far shorter treatment time, with the same beautiful results that patients come to expect over the years. He graduated from University of Missouri in Kansas City Ortho School and University of Minnesota Dental School. And he's been published in the American Journal of Orthodontics trade magazine. And he's a key opinion leader for Ormco Orthodontics and dental monitoring. He's a nice guy, Midwestern nice, and pleasure to work with him.
John, welcome to Natural Health Matters.
Hey, thank you, David.
Thank you for being here. Well, I wanted to start off the show. People are probably wondering, I want to listen to a podcast about health and wellness, but why are we talking about orthodontics? Well, the reason why is because oral health has a lot to do with health in general. And I just wanted to point out a couple of articles from the published literature. I've got a couple of studies here that I found. The first one is a journal article published in the journal Arthrosclerosis, which points out that oral health has been associated with cardiovascular disease. And the conclusions in this article say that the number of teeth and the number of deep pockets, which are both measures of periodontal disease, were significantly related to future cardiovascular disease. And that's a peer-reviewed journal out of England, I believe. And here's another study associating oral health with diabetes. And this journal was the British Dental Journal. The results identified a number of systemic reviews of low and high quality suggesting that diabetes is associated with periodontal disease, tooth loss, and oral cancer in particular, and the management of oral diseases, most notably periodontal care, has a short-term beneficial influence on metabolic outcomes related to diabetes. So oral health is associated with heart disease and diabetes, as well as dementia, which I'll show you another article here. Here we go. And again, this one is the British Dental Journal, and this study was published in 2018. And these researchers said the results suggest that poor oral hygiene is associated with dementia, and more so amongst people in advanced stages of the disease. Suboptimal oral health, gingivitis, dental caries, tooth loss, and John, you got to help me with this one. Endotulusis? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, edentulous.
Okay.
That's loss of teeth, edentulous.
Okay, so periodontal disease appears to be associated with increased risk of developing cognitive impairment and dementia. So that's a pretty astounding finding, shocking. And the last one is it's associated with lung disease, pulmonary disease. So let's look at this one. Again, we're talking about the British Dental Journal. This study was published in 2017. And here's what this one has to say. The results identified a number of systemic reviews of medium to high quality, which provide evidence that oral health and oral hygiene habits have an impact on incidence and outcome of lung diseases, such as pneumonia and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So here we have in the published medical literature an association between oral health and heart disease, diabetes, dementia, and lung disease. And it's a lot of people haven't made that connection, but it's there nonetheless. And I would suggest, just real quick, I don't want to take up the whole time with the introduction here. Now, understand, association is not causation, right? It's something that might be correlated with oral health, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the cause. But the connection here, I believe, is so strong. It didn't take me a long time to find these articles, but the connection is so strong that we shouldn't ignore it. The natural nation should be very interested in this information. I think this is one of the reasons why. Our energy meridians that the body has all run through the teeth. And here's a chart that shows the association of certain organs with certain teeth. So the incisors up front here, associated with kidney, bladder. I don't know if you can see this, John.
I can, yes.
Liver and bladder. Over here, these molars associated with the pancreas and the stomach. The rear molar here, heart disease. Because of the connection between this energy flow and oral health, I think that explains a lot of why oral health is associated with so many different conditions. So I'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes if you care to look at that on your own. And if you're listening on the audio podcast, it's now available on YouTube and the website in video. This is one of my first video podcasts, so excuse me for the clumsiness on the tech issues here. But thoughts on any of that, John?
Oh, yeah, I've got quite a few. Well, not having looked at any of the actual data, any of those articles, it's long been known that straighter teeth, for example, are easier to keep clean. Teeth that are easier to keep clean are such that people's bacterial levels are different in their mouth than someone who's not taking care of their teeth. And so every time someone flosses, there's usually some sort of a slight transient bacteremia that's caused, and you don't want to be getting unhealthy bacteria in your blood. And so this is well known for people that have had heart problems or some implant issues where they need to be pre-medicated before they have dental procedures. But I think that the systemic health and oral health thing is very, very interesting. There's a lot of evidence now that there's a sort of a gut to oral health connection as well. I know that when I was in, my undergrad in dental school, we were always taught that the vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10, goes from your brain to your intestines and your gut, if you will. And that your brain gives your gut information and instructions on what to do. But now we actually know that 90% of those fibers actually go from your gut back to your brain. So that's the gut-brain connection is a kind of a cliche term that's kind of really thrown out a lot more these days. But there's also more and more evidence that there's a signaling pathways between your oral health and your gut health. So many people are thinking that your oral health is a sign of systemic health, which is something that really concerns me when you see many kids these days, especially where their overall systemic health, they're too young to have really lived through and are showing any of those symptoms. However, at the same time, they have this underlying condition that's undiagnosed, whether it's significant caries or whether it's significant gingivitis or periodontitis. That's something that's going to eventually catch up to them later. And things like diabetes and long-term cognitive issues. Some people think that some of the Alzheimer's is almost like a type 3 diabetes. And so, it's very well known that sugar and your oral environment most people know that sugar is something that the bad bacteria, if you will, in your oral environment, they like to eat those sugars, and then they have their own cascade of problems that they cause. But I think it's a lot deeper than that, and we're really just getting to the kind of getting into the true connections as we get more and more into the oral cavity and gut connection. Another health thing that might be a little bit more obscure, but I think is even more important, is the connection between your teeth, the look of your teeth, and then the psychological connection that is involved there. Many people don't know that from a embryology perspective, your upper four front teeth, the smiling teeth, if you will, number 7 through 10, they derive from the same nerve layer, embryologic layer, as does your central nervous system. So the fact that there's some sort of a connection, embryologic connection between your smile and your central nervous system, or your brain and your spinal cord, is something that many people find interesting as well.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. The way the body is so complex and everything is interrelated and interconnected. It's just amazing to me when you study anatomy and physiology. It really is. So, John, how did you get into orthodontics to begin with?
My father's an orthodontist. He started a practice in Bismarck in 1973. I grew up thinking I wanted to be a medical doctor, but most of the physicians I studied under and shadowed in the early 90s said, do what your dad does. Don't go to medical school. And I'm certainly glad that I didn't. I have some aptitudes when it comes to spatial skills and hand-eye coordination, et cetera. And so dentistry in general and orthodontics really allowed me to use those aptitudes, which makes for a more satisfying life. But I went into dental school knowing that I wasn't necessarily going to be an orthodontist. It's a very slim chance of getting orthodontics these days, as opposed to when my dad was going back to school. It was so challenging to be an orthodontist that almost no one wanted to do it. For example, to get braces on, it'd take 3 to 4 hours. It was a very, very laborious procedure. So I love orthodontics. I'm glad that I got into had the opportunity to become an orthodontist. And I like to say that one of the most fulfilling things for me is that we're moving more than teeth, and the whole psychological aspect of it. I'm providing straight teeth, but it's a lot more than that. Providing confidence, new possibilities, a different future, and even well-known journals like the Harvard Business Review 10 years ago had an article that said that kids that have had orthodontics and have straight teeth, they make on average $250,000 more over their working life than those that have not. And so,
wow, that's staggering.
Yeah. So, people that, if you're more confident in your smile, and I see these changes all the time, sometimes it's a 13 or 14-year-old, sometimes it's a 50-year-old, sometimes it's a 70-year-old. I've got a patient 72 years old that smiled for the first time in her life for a photo last month. She's 72 years old. Wow. And so think of the impact that makes on someone. And the stories that she has to tell about how her smile held her back for all of her life. And now she's finally doing something about it. It's a very special place to be, knowing that you are having, the hands of God in some ways, if you will, of being able to change these lives. It's really extraordinary. And I think that people really, really underestimate the connection the psychological connection, because I think for a lot of people, I think that it's buried in some ways, and I have a 52-year-old male ICU nurse comes in and he just loses it, starts crying. And he says, my smile has held me back for all of my life. And now he's 52 years old, so there's a systemic connection, but my point is that there's an extraordinary psychic connection between how someone's teeth feel and how someone's teeth make them feel. And it makes orthodontics really extraordinary, which leads me back to originally why the great thing about ODO, or on-demand orthodontist, is how we are able to bring this to more people with this sort of underlying drive and intention. That's what our intention is. It's just to try to move more than teeth and to change lives. That's what we're trying to do.
That is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, John. And I just wanted to point out, this is Natural Health Matters, and I believe that human beings are a spirit. We have a mind, and we live in a body, and we cannot ignore that mental emotional component, because the things that we feel, because our minds will send instructions to our brains. And as you alluded to earlier, our brains run our bodies. So the mental emotional component has a lot to do with our health outcomes on a physical level.
Yeah.
So, Judd, I have this is a question I have for you. When people think about braces, they think about brackets and wires. Mm-hmm. But I know John doesn't really lean on that. He's got a new approach and embracing new technology. Could you talk a little bit about that new technology and what kind of problems it solves?
Sure. So it was Dr. John that solved it and opened my eyes originally. I've worked in the orthodontic industry for about 11 years, most formally at a formidable orthodontic OEM, one of the biggest in the world, and manufactures brackets and wires. And there I was a sales rep for some years and worked in product management, led that group, and developed products, and was fortunate to work with a lot of outstanding orthodontists, many of whom were inventors of very popular bracket and wire systems. And I was very much immersed in that community before I joined, most recently, Spark Aligners, an orthodontic OEM, which is partner company to Ormco. There I met Dr. Warford, and kind of the journey took off. But I had heavy cognitive biases on what I thought clear aligners could and could not do, and what I thought brackets and wires could and could not do. I think that there's this industry is not dissimilar from any other industry. There's people that went to school, they're specialists, and to go and learn clear aligner therapy, it's in many ways, for an orthodontist or even a dentist, it's like learning a new language. In what I've noticed in universities in the orthodontic community is that it's, at least historically up until recently, it's heavily bracket and wire focused, and these are the disciplines that come out. And so if you get in a rhythm with swinging the golf club in one way, it's got to take a lot of things for you to want to change your golf swing or even your clubs and the way you do things, especially when you know that you can consistently play a good golf game, right?
Right.
What's fascinating about the aligner community, the more I immerse, is there's a material delta in quality of orthodontists as far as how they treat aligner cases. And because, as Dr. John will say, these procedures are done over the computer as opposed to a tensile movement in the human mouth. Whereas you go into the orthodontist and they line up your braces on your teeth, they put it in the FA point of your tooth, and they put an arch wire in there, and that arch wire usually has elastic thermal properties to pull your teeth in the same direction that the wire's arch is shaped. And one thing that I learned straight away with aligners is that you can move each tooth independently as you would prefer it to be moved. But in order to dictate those terms of treatment, one has to have a fundamental understanding of the systems in the computer that are required to move the tooth, and to know that there's going to be a contraindication for every tooth movement you're going for. And I think this is a reason why the aligner community became so fascinating to me, because there just aren't that many world-class aligner orthodontists out there. There are aligner orthodontists out there that treat a lot of aligner cases. Dr. John, what drew me to him is he's treated over 4,000 aligner cases, but he's set every last one of them up in the software. This is uncommon. This is a lesser known thing out there for orthodontists. So we say an ODO experience matters. Those aren't words or wind. Those aren't just words. This is the man that's setting up with his systems. And so when I started to make some discovery and to learn, wow, you can really extrude a lateral with an aligner. Wow, you can really get transverse of these beautiful wide Hollywood smiles with an aligner. And oh, by the way, aligners are clear. And oh, with this fascinating technology, dental monitoring, you can actually use it to treat remotely because it isn't a tensile thing. And you can just drop ship trays right to the patient. It unlocks a whole other realm of possibilities because everything you do in a aligner is completely customized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really incredible. I'm thinking back to school. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in '87 and a master's in '89. Well, word processing as software was just coming out. I went through all high school and all my college writing out my papers and making hand corrections. And the last year, my senior year in my MBA program, I got a word processor. It was a big, huge, it took up the whole desk. It was a brother machine. But man, and it had like a 2-line display and I could see about 4 words at a time. But that was night and day better than what I did with the typewriter and handwriting. And I'm thinking about that as compared to wires and brackets and the technology you're talking about here. It's just amazing. And I want the audience to know, I want the Natural Nation to know that I didn't just read this in the book. John didn't just read it in a book, and Judd didn't just read it. We actually believe in this stuff. My daughter is 18 years old. She's a senior in high school. She is wearing the aligners right now. And Judd, your wife, Shar, she's wearing them as well, right?
Right, and our dentist, by way with concert with Dr. Warford, is treating my wife and your daughter.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And I only met John today, and it's amazing that he's treating my daughter, and it's so much more effective than traditional orthodontics. It blows me away. It really does. It's my contention that we maximize our health potential when we align our lives more fully with God's natural design for spirit, mind, and body. Well, God's design for our body is that our teeth mesh properly, like 2 gears in a machine fitting together. And when we chew, that has impact on our health because when the teeth are malaligned, that affects the nervous system health. As any chiropractor will tell you, if you're experiencing a subluxation of the spine or a misalignment in the spine, that will interfere with energy flow throughout the body and ultimately the organs, which will impact your health. I believe the same is true with your mouth. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of different ways. One is, you're right. The teeth were designed to fit in a certain way, and with normal variation, everyone's teeth are slightly different shapes. But teeth that don't fit properly, they tend to abnormally wear. Sometimes they can cause, if you have an uncomfortable bite, it can cause other skeletal muscular issues. And some of the biggest ones are longevity. If teeth don't fit properly, they don't fit the way that they're supposed to. The forces that can cause teeth to move in certain ways. I just last week had an 83-year-old patient in that said, I just noticed that my teeth are hitting real hard in the front, and this front tooth kind of is now sticking out. Or it can cause longevity issues with the gum tissue, the supporting bone, etc., from the teeth hitting too hard and flexing in the wrong way. So proper loading of the teeth and having the loads on the teeth that are appropriate for the back teeth hitting harder than the front teeth, as an example, are very important, and from a perspective of longevity of the teeth, as well as other things such as overall harmony, if you will, and and comfort and lifestyle.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So there's a lot of information out there about orthodontics and the connection to airway and how important breathing is to health. Could you speak to that for a minute, John?
Yeah, and airway is very important. It's a more complicated subject than just the oral cavity, for example. There's a lot of things that comes to the pharynx and the larynx, as well as the nasal cavity, etc. But there is some evidence that suggests that getting proper expansion of the maxilla and the associated bones at the appropriate time, allows for proper development of the mandible, which is your lower jaw. And if your lower jaw is allowed to develop more anteriorly or more forward, it allows for a more open airway. And so we do this sort of as a byproduct of having teeth that don't fit right. We treat airways all the time. And sometimes later in life, we treat with orthodontics, we treat airways many times as a conjunction with oral surgery to bring both upper and lower jaws forward to open up the airway to alleviate things like sleep apnea, et cetera, which can be literally life-altering events.
Yeah. Would you say that the younger you start that treatment, the better?
Yeah. The neat thing about treating younger kids, and I've always been a proponent of early treatment. The American Association of Orthodontics has now for decades suggested that people have their children seen by age 7 is what they say. I kind of temper that a little bit, even though byage7.com is my URL that I got about 12 years ago. I thought that was a good idea. Nice. When you 7, 8, 9 years old, when you're still in what's called an early mixed dentition, when you have mostly baby teeth, research has shown that, man, you can really, with very gentle forces, and it doesn't need to be heavy forces, you can really get a lot of change to the bone. 10, 11 years ago, now my oldest daughter, Judd, and my friend named Scott gave me the idea from a prominent orthodontist in Minneapolis. And he said, she's not using the expanders anymore. She's just putting braces on the teeth. And I thought to myself, man, I've been expanding teenagers and adults without expanders for years. I just never thought of doing it on a young kid. So my oldest daughter at the time, she's 6.5. I put braces on mostly baby teeth. And yeah, she was a test subject, although she had crowding. I was amazed that my lightest wire in 2 weeks was expanding her teeth. And I thought to myself, for all of these years, I've been pushing and pulling and putting all these heavy forces, even though the way that my father and I did it was considered extraordinarily gentle compared to most people. And we found that you even needed lighter forces to get maximum impact than we thought. So, I mean, the reality is that, the younger you treat, the lighter it can be. With the liners, I treat some very young patients in the liners, and they can get away with just wearing them at nighttime only. And wow, just dramatic results with really very little impact on their life, which is really neat, because, you don't want to be, putting too much on, a 7, 8, 9-year-old any more than you need to. So it's very, very effective.
Well, our regular dentist, I had him look at my number 2 daughter. Her name is Rachel. And he said, her teeth look great. I don't think she needs orthodontic work. But I was looking at him. I said, Rachel, I think it might be worth going to an orthodontist and getting an opinion. So we went, and she was 18 years old and a senior in high school. And the orthodontist said, "Oh yeah, sure. Let me show you these pictures. She has a misaligned teeth, and she could definitely benefit from braces." And Rachel, on the drive home, she was just so sad that she said, "Dad, I do not want to have braces on for my senior pictures." Mm-hmm. Yeah. I said, "Well, it is what it is." And then I started talking to Judd, and because I knew Judd was into this field, he's like, "Well, why don't we just look into aligners?" John is very, very, very good at doing this long distance. And I didn't even know that it was done distance, distance healthcare. I didn't even know it was done that way then. And she got them. And the first day she was kind of like, I don't know about this, but it took maybe 2-3 days. And she was into it. And now she's doing her scans, and she's just doing great. And if you're more than 5-6 feet away, you don't even know she's wearing anything. You can't even tell. So could you speak a little bit, Judd mentioned this a little bit, but can you kind of expand upon the idea of the problems that you solve by doing what an on-demand orthodontist solves?
Well, the number one problem is that, as Judd alluded to earlier, is that, aligners are an expensive thing to learn how to treat with. And so, as I say in my presentations, it's my most expensive tuition by far in my life has been how to learn how to treat with aligners because you're paying that high lab fee to a $1 billion company. And so, $1 billion companies don't become $1 billion companies by giving a lot of price breaks. And so it's a very expensive thing to do. And also, like Judd said, you're very comfortable with something that you know works, and braces do work. I mean, I've done it thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And it's just that we're always looking for ways to do things better. And the way I explain it is that braces are not very smart compared to aligners. Aligners, you can program, as Judd said, everything. You move this, move that, don't move this, don't move that, do this first, then do that, do this in this way. And braces aren't nearly as programmable as aligners are. And so aligners are a wonderful thing, but most orthodontists and most dentists that do orthodontic treatment, they either don't know how to do aligners real well, or they just kind of do it for the easiest cases, the ones that are kind of the layups, which is a whole nother conversation in and of itself. And the reason is because aligner companies are good at doing two things. One is making movies of teeth moving. And when you see the teeth move on a computer screen, you think, oh, that's amazing. It's going to go just like that. But the problem is that teeth don't watch movies. And so you still need to have very sound biomechanical principles and do things in a certain way. And plastic is different than brackets and wires, very similar in a lot of ways, in order to do things effectively. And so, 12 years of, doing more and more and more and more aligners. And my original impetus was because I live in a very reasonably rural area, and many of our patients drive 2 or 3 hours one way for an appointment. So if over half of your patients are driving an hour or more for an appointment, you real quickly want to figure out a way to make that as easy as possible on them, which is why I kind of jumped on the aligner wagon train, if you will, back in 08, 09, and really tried to learn it myself. And I've been through a lot of iterations of it. And we've gotten to the point now when we have, we've got our way of doing things. And, when dental monitoring came by and, we started using that in 2018, I realized that I'm not an orthodontist when I'm in front of the patient anymore. I'm an orthodontist when I'm on the computer. And so if I can see what a patient's teeth are looking like every 3 days, if I want to, usually it's 7 days, but we can get that real-time feedback and we know exactly how things are going. We can provide the even better orthodontic treatment, and I don't need to be in front of the patient in order to do that. And what we're asking these partner dentists is very, very easy dental procedures, far easier than what they do on a daily basis. The hard part is what's going on in the orthodontist's mind and on the computer and on the design, which is a very, very technical, very fun and very fascinating. Just in order to, to plan out, I'm going to want to do this and this and this, and sort of game plan everything from day one as best you can. So it's very cool. It's very cutting edge, but it allows us to bring, I'm a rather humble person, but my expertise, which is rather accomplished, to people that are having struggles or want to provide aligner treatment to more of their patients.
John, can any dentist who's a DDS learn this procedure, learn this technique, and work with you?
Oh yeah, they're usually very surprised at how easy it really is. The hands-on dental procedure, many times the start of it can be outsourced to a staff member, depending on the state laws. But it's far easier than filling a cavity for them.
We watched the local dentist is working with my daughter do put the initial visit when he put the aligners on. And it really wasn't all that involved. She was probably in the chair for about 30 minutes. It wasn't a big deal. And yeah, I said, wow, this guy has skills. He's a doctor of dental surgery. This looks like a pretty easy procedure for him. And I think it was. There's another thing I want to touch on. We can't talk about oral health without mentioning amalgam filling. If once the amalgam is in place, it's going to release very, very slowly. Mm-hmm. But it is a very toxic substance. It's my understanding that mercury is the second most toxic substance on planet Earth. The only thing that exceeds that in toxicity is uranium, used to make nuclear weapons. So, John, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I might be in left field, but you're the expert. If an amalgam filling is removed properly, an average size filling, and you threw that thing, and you didn't dispose of it properly, you just threw it in a 3-acre lake, the Department of Health would come along, and if they measured the mercury levels in that lake, they'd say, no swimming. You cannot swim in this lake. It's toxic. But as long as that amalgam filling is inside the mouth, it's okay. That sounds crazy to me. Am I out in left field, John?
No, you're not. I can only provide brief commentary because I haven't placed an amalgam filling in over 20 years. And even back then, it was a very, very hot button issue. And so I don't know the 3-acre lake analogy exactly, but I do know that they're being used less and less. Not, every restoration has its pros and its cons, but I used this analogy last week is if you want 5 opinions, ask 4 dentists, right? I mean, it's and the same things with orthodontics. Everybody's got their different way of making chocolate chip cookies. So there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of movement towards natural natural dentistry. Depending on the state, that's a very different thing. But I think doing your due diligence and really kind of getting a good connection with your dentist, whether or not you decide what restorations to do and or what restorations to remove. I know that a dental amalgam, when removed, is very highly regulated. They have to have special procedures and special suction equipment, et cetera, to make sure that things are done in a very safe manner. But again, that's not really my field because it was 21 years ago was the last time I placed an amalgam.
So for anybody listening, if they want to get their amalgam fillings removed, don't go to a regular dentist that just grinds them out. You're asking for more trouble. You're better off leaving the thing intact than doing that. One last thing, I'd like to share a quick story. I don't use fluoride. I don't use fluoride in my toothpaste. I filter it out of my drinking water at the house. And years ago, I was at the dentist getting a cleaning, and I got my teeth cleaned, and one of my daughters was with me getting her teeth cleaned, and they said, well, it's time for her fluoride treatment. I said, no, we'll pass on that. She said, why? I said, well, fluoride is a toxic substance, and I prefer not to put that in my kid's mouth. She said, she paused for a second, and she said, I wonder, I could tell her she was thinking, I wonder if I could share this with them. Then she says, you're right. Half the kids that we do this fluoride treatment with, they throw up before they leave the office. So that's pretty staggering. And, if you just look at a tube of Crest toothpaste, there'll be a warning on the back of that thing that says, if you ingest more than the amount on a toothbrush, call your poison control center. Yeah. So it's a toxic substance. And, for here in the Natural Nation, we try to minimize our exposure to toxins. So avoiding fluoride is, in my estimation, a good idea.
That's, I assume, why they suggest spitting rather than swallowing on Listerine.
Yeah.
So, John, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Let's see. No, I think I've got, unless Judd's got anything that I didn't hit, I've got a lot of things I can talk about. So whatever you guys have.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of topics here where we can go deeper that are just wonderful conversations, particularly airway. That's just a great conversation. And there's a really interesting psychological component. And I think that goes deeper and talks about, what happens there and people and, the smile reveal and all those things, but could be for another date. But for me, it's been a pleasure to visit with you and Dr. John today.
Yeah, thanks for being here, John. And Dr. John, if someone wants to get a hold of you, learn more about you, what's the best way to do that?
The best way right now with regards to this is ondemandorthodontist.com, and you can get a hold of us there.
That's an orthodontist with a T. Yep. On Demand Orthodontist.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Dr. John. Thank you, Judd.
Hey, thank you, David. I appreciate it.
For more, go to davidsandstrom.com. In the show notes for each episode, you'll find links to all the resources that were mentioned, as well as a full transcript with timestamps that you can download for free. In addition, I always include a content upgrade with each show, which is a free download that is designed to help you go deeper with that subject. Once again, thank you for listening, and I'll talk with you next time. Be blessed.